Okay, so it's exactly 2:05 and we are starting our lecture.
Take it away, madam.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome to session 5 of IVA 614 Global Marketing. And today we'll be treating global market segmentation, targeting, and positioning, also referred to as the STP process. So as usual, there are certain learning outcomes that we hope to achieve by the end of the session. And they are as follows. First, to be able to identify the variables that global marketers can use to segment global markets. And then to be able to explain the criteria that global marketers use to choose specific markets to target. And then to compare and contrast the 3 main target market strategy options. And then finally, to describe the various positioning options available to global marketers. So these are the main outcomes we hope to achieve by the end of the session. So we'll get right into it. We'll start with global market segmentation. Now, what is global market segmentation? It is basically the process of identifying specific segments, whether they be country groups or individual consumer groups within specific countries, of potential customers with homogeneous attributes. And the emphasis here is on potential customers and homogeneous attributes, who are likely to exhibit similar responses to a company's marketing mix. Now, segmentation in itself is important because as marketers, regardless of the organization we are working for, whether it is a local firm or a multinational firm, regardless of how much resources they have at their disposal, there's always a limit to what we can do as marketers. There's no way we can say there's an organization that can sell every single product and service that every consumer needs to be able to satisfy their need and want. So that in itself places a limitation on the activities of the marketer. So that means that marketers have to be wise to choose the markets that, given the resources that they have and the kind of product or service that they are selling, will be the most optimal group of consumers who have the need for their product and service and are willing to exchange some form of value or resource for it. Hence the need for segmentation. So with segmentation, we are saying that the marketer has to identify these segments of people who have an interest in the company's product or service and are willing to exchange resources for it. And these segments, because of the nature of the product or service that we are selling to them, should possess certain homogeneous attributes. So certain things that are common to all of them that link them together. And that will determine the nature of responses that they will have towards the company's marketing mix. So basically, global market segmentation is based on the premise that every company, regardless of what resources you have, you can't target everyone. You can't serve every market segment. So you need to attempt to identify the consumers in different countries, depending on the foreign countries or regions that you are operating in, who share similar needs and desires for your product or service that you are selling, and then targeting them with your marketing mix. And that is why we need segmentation. So when marketers are segmenting, there's a very important decision that they have to make. And that is in relation to whether or not they adopt a standardized or adapted marketing mix to serve these consumers' needs and wants. Why are we saying this? Remember in the beginning of our global marketing course, we talked about globalization and the continuum between the local market and the foreign market, where the organization is always trying to balance between selling a standardized version of the product they've been selling in their local market to the foreign market, or adapting it in some way or form to suit the needs of the foreign markets that they are entering into. And that is one of the main decisions that global marketers have to make when it comes to segmentation. So by performing segmentation, marketers can generate enough insights that are needed to devise the most effective approach, be it standardization or adaptation, to serve the particular markets that they choose and decide to serve. And this begins with the choice of one or more variables to use as a basis for grouping customers. Because let's face it, there are billions of people on this planet. And there are several characteristics and variables that we can use to delineate different customer groups or segments. But when it comes to marketing, there are specific variables that we need to use that will make sense towards our strategy formulation and guide us towards putting together the right approach to sell to these customers. So what are these types of segmentation that we are talking about? The first one is geographic segmentation, which is basically the most common one, followed by demographic segmentation, psychographic segmentation, behavior segmentation, or some people will say behavioral segmentation, and then benefit sort segmentation. Now, I need to emphasize that global marketers and marketers in general never use a single segmentation criterion as the basis for their market segmentation. Sally, please, you can speak up.
Yeah, Doc. I just want to provide some context in my mind.
Yes.
In relation to session 4, where we talked about how to collect data, doing primary research and secondary research before you enter the global market.
Yes.
I'm thinking in my mind that segmentation would then become an ongoing thing that you will do even before you conduct a primary research if you need to go into that market.
Yes.
And after you are in the market, you'd have to continuously be segmenting depending on the outcomes of your strategy within that market.
That's true. Because before you even commit resources to conducting extensive research into a market, you need to be sure that there's actually a segment that is willing and able to purchase the product or service that you're offering. So Sally, you are spot on with that submission in terms of how the segmentation should be before you even do your research, and also continue after you have entered the foreign market. So thank you for that submission, Sally.
Thank you.
Okay, so based on that, let's talk about the types of segmentation. Now, like I said, there are 5 main types of segmentation, which I run through, being geographic, demographic, psychographic, behavioral, and then benefit sort segmentation. And what I want us to emphasize when it comes to these 5 individual kinds of segmentation is that there's no way a marketer will just pick one type of segmentation and use it as the only basis for segmenting a market. Marketers will always use a combination of 2 or more of these segmentation variables to segment markets. This is because it makes it easier to fine-tune the identification of the nature of that particular customer or customer segment when you are using more variables, as against using one particular variable, because human beings, as we know, are multi-layered. They are dynamic. There's so many things that are going on when you even take an individual. So it's not just about their gender or where they live. It goes deeper to their psychological and physiological and physical state. So marketers often use a combination of segmentation criteria to ensure that they can be able to effectively target certain customer segments, especially when some of these segments have been largely neglected by other companies or organizations who are using more generalized segmentation criteria. And therefore, it helps the marketer to be able to identify, for instance, certain niche markets that have been largely neglected and can become the source or basis of their competitive advantage. So let's go into the different types of segmentation one after the other. First, let's talk about the most common one, which is geographic segmentation. And geographic segmentation, basically, like the name suggests, means dividing the world into geographic segments or subgroups. And firms often start their segmentation off from the geographic angle. Hence, this course that we are studying global marketing, because the basis of global marketing is the ability of the firm to either divide the world into different segments based on region or country, or even looking at the whole world as one large market. So firms often start from the geographic segmentation basis and then build up from there with other segmentation criteria. But sometimes marketers make the mistake of thinking that the fact that certain consumer groups or countries are in proximity to their local market, they will share similar characteristics with the people or the consumers in their market, which is a huge error in judgment. As we all know from perhaps experiences and some of the discussions we've even had in class, we realize that countries that are even in geographic proximity to Ghana exhibit certain unique characteristics that are totally dissimilar from the average Ghanaian consumer. Countries like Nigeria, for instance, in terms of proximity, with talking about the countries that border Ghana, they are an English-speaking country, which is supposed to share certain level of similarity with the consumers in Ghana, but that proximity does not bring about that similarity that we are looking for. So we realize that even as we are using geographic segmentation based, it is not enough for a marketer to go off of to take serious strategic decisions, because the moment you do that, it means that you are ignoring all manner of other criteria that can have an effect. However, geographic segmentation is the basis, and that is where everyone starts from, especially with the global marketer. So companies like Unilever, being multinationals, have perfected this art of geographic segmentation. For instance, Unilever Global is divided into the Africa region, the Americas, the Asia Pacific region, Europe, and then the Middle East. So we can see that they have actually found their own grouping. They are not going generally by the geographic segments that have been created, perhaps by continent, but they have created their own unique geographic groupings that helps them to make sense of their global marketing strategy. And from what I can see, they are excelling at it. Please, can anyone give us another example of a company that is using geographic segmentation? I think there are a number of multinationals.
Yeah, Nestle does the same thing.
Okay, so what geographic segments do you have? Is it similar to Unilever's?
Yes, it's similar.
Okay, so you also have the Africa. Can you please?
Yeah, the Africa, AOA, the Europe.
Okay.
So even within Africa, we also have even within AOA, we have the Central and West Africa region, and then we have the Eastern Africa region too.
Okay.
So even within the bigger segments, there are smaller geographical segments as well.
Exactly, exactly. So that is another prime example of a multinational that has perfected the art of the geographic segmentation. Thank you for that, Ellen. Is there any other one? Saliu, does MTN have something similar?
Yes, ma'am. MTN is basically in emerging markets. So
okay.
In Africa, we have SIGA, so it's Southeast Africa and the Ghana region. Ghana is an outlier which has been added to Southern Africa. Then we have WECA, which is West and Central Africa. We've got MENA, which is Middle East and North Africa.
Okay, so these are all classic examples of the geographic segmentation, again perfected by another multinational, MTN. Thank you for that, Saliu. So apart from geographic segmentation, we can also talk about demographic segmentation. And this is another baseline segmentation criterion that a lot of marketers use. We can talk about, under demographic segmentation, age group, income level, gender, education level, religion, race, and nationality. These are all demographic bases by which marketers segment markets. However, among these demographic criteria, age and national income seem to be by far the most popular variables that marketers tend to pick on, as against the gender, education level, religion, and others. Now let's find out why. So age, for instance, why age distribution? Age is the most basic variable, but the most important, because research over the years has shown that consumer preferences continually change and evolve with age. So you realize that what someone liked when they were a toddler changes drastically when they become a teenager, and it changes when they move from teenage into young adulthood, into middle-age status, and what have you, making age a very prime variable when it comes to selling something or marketing something to the consumer base, because marketers thrive mainly on consumer preferences. So if the consumer's preferences are changing, then it's important for the marketer to keep track of these changes in preference, to be able to make sure they can keep up with the times. So marketers find age groupings to be very useful in targeting their marketing efforts. And recently, there has been a boom in academic research into what we call the generational theory, which I myself am doing research into at the moment. And we basically try to study the different cohorts of generations based on their age or the years within which they were born, and study their characteristics and how these characteristics influence their behaviors and their responses towards specific product categories. And in doing that, we have been able to establish that, yes, indeed, like previous research has proven, generations differ based on their preferences, their needs and wants, as well as their reactions towards marketing mix activities. So the generational theory basically breaks down the generations into cohorts. Currently, we are at 7 cohorts. I ended at Generation Z because the latest cohort is yet to be firmed up, and that is the cohort that we refer to as the Gen Alphas. So when we talk about generational theory, generational theory starts from the silent generation, which are those who were born from 1943 and above. Now, depending on the literature that you read, the cap years may be different, with a plus or minus 1 difference. So for instance, you may read literature that may tell you that baby boomers are from 1944 to 1964. In some literature, it may add a plus or minus 1 and end at, say, 1965, but it's still the same. You realize that they are all within the same bracket. So like I was saying, the generations start from silent generation, being 1943 and above, those who were born in that period. And then we come down to the baby boomers, who were those born between 1944 and 1964. Then for Generation X, those born between 1965 and then 1979. Then we have Generation Y, or the millennials, who were born between 1980 and 1994. And then the Gen Z were born between 1995 and 2015. And then those born from 2016 downwards are those we refer to as the Gen Alphas. And they are now at most 4 years old. So technically, marketers cannot really plan for them. Hence, their exclusion from the generational theory for the moment, because we can't delve deep into doing research into consumers who actually do not even have purchasing power yet. So we end at Gen Z. Now, this chart that we are seeing shows us the generational distribution of the US market based on age. Now, they exclude the silent generation because they believe that the silent generation do not really have a significant purchasing power and they are not worth targeting. However, they start from the baby boomers. And by classification, as of 2020, the baby boomers in the United States were 76 million people, followed by the Generation X, who were 82 million people. And then the Generation Y, or the millennials, who are 73 million people. And then the Generation Zs, who are also 74 million in the US. Now, when you read about generational theory, you get to know the different characteristics of these generations. For instance, the Generation Y and Generation Z are known to be the tech-savvy generation. They are the ones who are always connected on multiple devices. They are the ones who are turned on 24/7 and tend to have specific needs when it comes to purchasing of products and services. They look out for specific characteristics. For instance, the Gen Y and Gen Z are the ones who are big on all this sustainability and ethical purchasing and fair trade. And they are the generations who are beginning to hold consumers and producers alike accountable for their activities and the effects of their activities on the environment. So marketing to such a group tells you how to be able to target them, because combined, when we look at the numbers, there's quite a significant number of them in the United States alone. And currently, the Gen Z are the largest consumer segment in the world. So by having a breakdown of these different age groups and knowing their characteristics, as marketers who are marketing globally, going into each market, you need to be able to know the breakdown of the age groups within the specific market segments you want to enter, so that you can determine, based on the resources that you have and the kind of product that you are going to sell, which age group you want to target in which geographic region. Because depending on the age group you decide to target, you may either be able to sell a standardized version of the product you are bringing from your domestic market, or you may have to adapt it to suit the needs of whatever age group you are trying to target. Hence, the importance of age as a criteria under the demographic segmentation variable. Also, in terms of income, we can talk about the GDP, GNP discussion, which we have had exhaustively in our previous lecture and the lecture before that. And we talked a lot about how the GDP and the GNP of a country can actually predict the purchasing power of the populace, such that companies like Apple should be able to determine how much a consumer will be able to pay for a cell phone, which will influence their approach to entering the market and how they sell their products and services. However, once again, it's very important to understand that using one variable alone is not enough. So income alone is not a good predictor, because I can tell you that there are a lot of Gen Zs who now use iPhone 11s, iPhone Pros, and they do not earn a single dollar or single CD. So imagine if we were using income alone, we would have lost that entire segment, because they have the purchasing power to buy those products and the need and the desire for those products, not because they can afford them. So that rules out income totally. Perhaps it's a generational thing, because they are tech savvy and they will do everything to have the latest trend in technology. So this is a prime example of how something like income alone is not enough to segment a market. You need to use things like income and age in combination with other segmentation criteria to make sure that you are actually targeting in an effective manner. So for instance, by income and population, in the United States, there are about 28.4 million foreign-born residents, right? With a combined income of $233 billion. So if you decide you are targeting foreigners who live in the US, this is the amount of income that they have together. So perhaps this is their GNP. So being able to break it down to the income of the last consumer will give you an idea of how much money that they have to spend. However, like I said, it is not enough on its own to determine why a consumer will go in to purchase a product. So we need to add other segmentation criteria. So that brings us to the end of the demographic segmentation criteria and why we are saying that age distribution and national income are pivotal variables under this segment. Is there anything anyone wants to say or ask before we go on? Yes, Lucy.
Madam, please, your examples are all in most of them in the US. Can you give an example with the age bracket and this thing in Ghana, so that if we can?
It is, okay, so like I said, it is a theory. So the age distribution is set. Are you with me? Lucy, are you with me?
Yes, please.
Good. So if I was applying in my research, for instance, I have studied females within the different, from baby boomers down. So I use the same age limits between 1995 and 2015 for Gen Z, Gen Y. However, the numbers are different. Now in Ghana here, the Ghana Statistical Service also uses a different criteria to segment the age groups.
Okay.
Good. So if you are looking at statistical services data, they will have a different breakdown. And we are using this because it's the global measure at the moment. Okay. And we are researchers. Good. So we have to do research that appeals to both the local and international community. So we do research using these age groupings as part of the generational theory. So if you want to use generational theory, you can use it in Ghana here. Just that you have to make sure that the consumers you are studying fall within the age brackets that have been specified by the theory.
Okay. All right.
Are you okay, Lucy?
Okay, yes. I was just asking if you know the age brackets we use in Ghana, if you're aware of it, and if you can share. But
the age brackets we use in Ghana.
Yeah, if you can share.
By the statistical service. Okay. I'll see if I can pull it up now and then share with you.
Okay, Baba, thank you.
Okay. Sally, please go ahead.
Yeah, Doc. I mean, as you said, so this is a theory that
yes.
a lot of organizations use to segment their
Exactly.
customer base. Now,
Yes.
from our point of view, we do this and we even deep dive further.
Good.
Now, to even take the generational segment as it is,
Yes.
just prior to lockdown, during lockdown, and post-lockdown,
Mm-hmm.
I would be able to tell you
Yeah.
the data usage consumption patterns of these generations.
Exactly.
So I will be able to tell you baby boomers used Facebook
Yeah.
20% of the time. They used WhatsApp calling. They did this, they did that.
Yeah.
Before, during lockdown, before lockdown, during lockdown, and post-lockdown.
Yeah.
And same for all the generations. And
Yeah.
then this data, it would help me understand either current or future behavior patterns for
Exactly.
these generations. If I need to market certain specific products, I know who it would be appealing to.
Exactly.
So Lucy, going back to that, it is organization based. So
Yeah.
you take my organization, for instance, for every single product line, aside all the numerous segmentation criteria that we use,
Yeah.
we use generational criteria as well to be able to determine how to sell specific products to specific people.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that submission, Sally. Lucy, are you okay?
You're able to get this thing now because of the registration of the SIM. Is that not it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Lucy, it's up to every organization to collect data of their consumers. I think we spoke about that during one of the lectures. Big data. That is where the gold
Yeah.
mine is. It's not
Yeah.
anywhere.
Yeah.
Data. That is why every social media site would keep collecting your data and will be marketing specifically to you.
That's
So
true.
collect data. It's very important.
Lucy, are you okay now?
Yes, madam. Thank you.
Yeah, so I've pulled up the statistical service age structure, right? So let me share that now so that you can see it. Okay. Lucy, can you see it now?
Yes, madam.
So I'm on the page of the Ghana Statistical Service.
Yes.
And this is their age structure. So they have 0 to 14 years, 15 to 24,
Okay.
55 to 64,
It's very faint. So.
then 65 years and over. Can you see it now?
Yes. Yes. I've seen
Okay.
it.
And this is as at 2010. So these are the figures as at 2010.
Okay.
Broken down into male and female. So you see, it's very different from the generational theory.
Okay.
But this is their unit of analysis.
Okay.
So just like Saliu said, it's organization based. Depending on who is breaking down the data and analyzing it and what they intend to use it for.
Thank you, madam.
You're welcome, Lucy. Okay. Please, does anyone have anything else before we proceed? Or we are all good?
Yes, please. We are good.
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. Now, the next criteria we are going to talk about is psychographic segmentation. Now, this kind of grouping of consumers is based on their attitudes, values, personality traits, and lifestyles. Now, by being able to break down their values, attitudes, personality traits, and lifestyle, we can be able to create better interactions with them by understanding what's important and valuable to them and why they behave in a certain way. For instance, Saliu just mentioned that he can be able to tell us specifically what age groups were visiting specific social media pages. And that is an example of a lifestyle trait, right? Breaking it down to that level based on their lifestyles during lockdown. And that is an example of combining demographic criteria with psychographic criteria to be able to predict behavior to some extent. So it is worthy to note that there are certain psychographic market profiles that are available for marketers to use, some more streamlined than others. So depending on your institution and the one that you choose to adopt, you can be able to psychographically profile your consumers to know how they behave in terms of their attitudes, values, personality traits, and lifestyles. However, some of these psychographic market profiles just capture specific types of psychographic variables. For instance, we are going to discuss momentarily the VALS framework, which only considers the values, attitudes, and lifestyles. And then there's a personality traits framework, which only looks at the personality traits of consumers. So depending on the needs of your organization and how far you want to take your segmentation, you can be able to use a combination of all these different psychographic segmentation criteria to be able to break down the customer segments that you have in the foreign market. So let's first talk about the VALS framework. Now, the VALS framework was developed by the SRI International. It is a non-profit market research organization that is affiliated to Stanford University. Now, Stanford does very well when it comes to consumer research. In fact, currently, I have been following their market. They have one of the best consumer research labs in the world, which I have been trying to get funding to replicate in Ghana. I'm still writing proposals. I'm just praying that one day one of them will get accepted and we can have that, because they have all the state-of-the-art equipment that helps us to be able to study consumers on a very micro level, to be able to understand their behavioral patterns and how they react to specific elements of the marketing mix. So I wasn't surprised that I realized that deep down SRI was affiliated to Stanford, because this framework was developed as a result of consumer research. And it basically classifies consumers' values, attitudes, and lifestyles using certain criteria on the basis of their motivations, as well as their access to resources and the level of innovation that they exhibit. So when we are talking about the VALS framework, this is what we are talking about. It is in the form of a square with innovators on the extreme top and survivors on the bottom, and then 6 other kinds of consumers in between. Now, these classifications are going to help us to predict the behavior of consumers based on what motivates them, be it their ideals, their level of achievement, or self-expression. And these, together with the resources that they have and the level of innovation that they exhibit, we can be able to tell how they might react to when it comes to purchasing and consumption of specific products and services. So when we talk about the ideals and the achievements and self-expression, these are the 3 primary motivations that will make an individual behave a particular way towards a product or service. Now, when we say ideals, we are talking about motivations that are grounded in the consumer's knowledge and principles. So it's about their intellectual curiosity, right? And their ability to search for information to make them well informed. And then when we talk about achievement, we are referring to the customer's desire to have a certain clear social position or to distinguish themselves socially from other members of the society. And then for self-expression, it's all about the consumer's preference for actions that will impact on the physical world, as well as give them some form of pleasure and excitement. So based on that, we can see that under ideals, there are 2 main types of consumers. We have the thinkers and the believers. And depending on the positioning, the thinkers are closer to the top. So we are saying that they are motivated by ideals, and then they have high resources and high preferences for what? Innovation. Likewise, the believers, we can say that the believers are also motivated by ideals. However, they have low resources and low innovation, and that will impact on the kind of goods and services that they prefer and would want to spend their money on. And it's the same for the achievements side of the diagram and then the self-expression side of the diagram. And all these different characteristics have implications for the purchases of goods and services. So for instance, when it comes to innovators, we are saying that based on their position, given that they are they have high resources and exhibit high levels of innovation. At the same time, they are in the middle, so they are motivated by achievement. It means that they take charge of their purchasing process, right? And they are sophisticated in terms of their consumption. So that means that if they are sophisticated, their purchases would reflect more upscale niche products and services to reflect that level of sophistication that they have. And at the same time too, because they are highly innovators, they'll be curious. So any new thing that comes about by way of technology or a new product or service, they'll be more inclined to try it out. And that's it for the innovators. Now we can talk about the thinkers, who by virtue of their position are motivated by ideals and then have high resources and high levels of innovation, which makes them reflective. So that means that they are well-educated people who will always seek out information and reflect on the information that they have before they go ahead and make a purchase, because they want to be well-informed, which is the second point there under the thinkers, before they make a purchase. And they also care about the content of the products that they purchase. So they are concerned about functionality, durability, and how much value they are getting based on how much they are spending and the level of durability and functionality they are getting in return. And that is it for the thinkers. Now we can talk about the believers, who are on the lower side of the ideal spectrum, where they are motivated by ideals, but then they have low resources and innovation. So in that case, they are literal people, loyal and moralistic, in the sense that they are fundamentally conservative because of the limited resources. They can't afford to spend as much as the innovators or the thinkers do, right? So given that they are also loyal, they would like to stick with brands that they are already using and are comfortable with. So they'll stick with what is familiar. And because they are low in innovation, they will be largely technology adverse. They would not want to veer off and try anything new, which contributes largely to their loyalty. So they'll like to stick with the familiar and stick with what they know. Now, moving on to the next level of the grade, where we have the achievements, the consumers who are motivated by achievement. Sorry, we can talk about achievers and strivers. Now, achievers, being on the upper part of the spectrum, have high resources and high innovation. So achievers are generally goal-oriented and brand conscious, because indeed they have the high resources to be able to afford these brands. And because they are goal-oriented and brand conscious, they would always prefer premium products to be able to demonstrate their success to their peers and people within their social circle, because they are achievers and they have high resources to back that level of achievement, right? And being achievers, they are also conventional. So they'll live goal-oriented lifestyles that will center around family and career, because family is one of the most ancient conventions that we have. So in essence, as a marketer, if you are marketing to achievers, you know that they will always want to see that whatever you're trying to sell to them is exclusive and will make them stand out and look successful among their peers. But on the other hand, the strivers do not necessarily have a lot of resources and innovation, but they are also motivated by achievement. So even though they cannot afford it, they are quite imitative. And these are the people that are usually targeted by the pirated brands and the counterfeit items, because they cannot afford the original, like the brand conscious achievers who will buy the premium products, but they still want to look trendy and look good. So they would try to emulate what the achievers have. And that is what will bring about this imitative thing, because out of their style consciousness, they cannot afford to not look good. So they'll try as much as possible to come close to the brand conscious people who can actually afford to buy these premium items in an imitative way. And that is it for the strivers. And then we move on to the consumers who are motivated by self-expression. And in this group, we can talk about experiencers and makers. Now, experiencers are people who have, again, high resources and high innovation, but are motivated by self-expression. So they will appreciate the unconventional in the sense that because they are backed by experience and have high resources and innovation. Okay, sorry about that. So because they have high resources and high innovations to back their level of experience, which is expressed through their self-expression, they are usually active and impulsive, right? They always want to show out and be seen. So they are usually very fashionable and enjoy socializing and enjoy entertaining themselves and entertaining others. So always wanting to show out and be seen makes them sort of trendsetters because they fancy expressing themselves through their actions and how they engage with people. And being impulsive, they will also be variety seeking because they will get bored easily with traditional and conventional things. So they'll always want to seek variety, especially when it comes to the products and services that they consume. So that is what we have for the experiences. And then for the makers, these are the ones who are also fueled by self-expression, but have low resources and low innovation to back it. So that means that they would always choose hands-on constructive activities, right? And spend leisure time with family and close friends because they are more responsible than the experiencers who like to socialize and have fun and seek variety and are impulsive all the time. And the makers, because they want to express themselves but do not have a lot of resources or innovation to do so, they favor more of practicality, right? They would rather go for something that would offer them value rather than chase trends and try to go for luxury items that will just make them show up and show out, which may not be practical for them in the long term. And because they do not have a lot of resources to throw around, they will always aim at becoming self-sufficient. So they'll rather buy basic products than go after products that will make them trendsetters. And then buy basic products that will keep them in a position where they can remain responsible towards their families. And then finally, we have the survivors who are motivated by achievement, but have low resources and low innovation to back it. So even as they are motivated by achievement, their primary aim is to survive. And that means that based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, they'll be concerned more with safety and security than sophistication and luxury and showing out, right? So they would always want to make sure that they find a good brand or product or service that satisfies their need and stay loyal to it because they are very cautious people and they are constrained in terms of their spending, given the low resources and the low levels of innovation that they exhibit. And therefore, they are the most likely group to go in for something that is a bargain or is heavily discounted because they are the people who are looking for basic needs to survive. Hence the name survivors. So this is how the VALS framework breaks down 8 kinds of consumers based on their values, attitudes, and lifestyles. Please, does anyone have anything they want to say before we move forward? Is everyone okay?
Oh, sorry. Ivan, go ahead.
Okay, so I wanted to say that it looks like it's very thorough.
Very.
Right. There's a lot to remember.
Yeah, I'm going to attach a PDF document on the VALS framework that breaks down everything.
Oh, thank you.
I'll put it in the drive. Yes, so that you can sit down and just read it all and take it in. Yeah, because it's a lot, like you said.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So please, you can talk.
Okay.
Yeah, Doug, I was going to ask. Okay, so looking at this framework,
yes,
is there further research that is cross-referencing this to some other psychographic model that you may have in order to classify customers based on this type of segmentation? The reason why I'm asking is customers are particularly difficult to box.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
generally, you tend to, look at several attributes from
Yeah,
several models, be able
exactly.
to arrive at the proper, or let's say the best fit segmentation that you have of your base.
That's true.
So I'm asking if there's some additional either model, something that you can overlay on this.
Good. So there are so many other models, like I said, but the more popular one for values, attitudes, and lifestyles is this one that I have shared with you. So there are others, and we can do further research to find the other models. Sally, are you there?
I'm with you, Doc.
Yes, but what I know is that the people who develop individual frameworks have their own way of improving upon the frameworks as time goes on. But what they do not do is benchmark it against other frameworks that are different from theirs. So the onus falls on researchers like myself to now start picking some of these frameworks and try to overlay them, like you are saying, to be able to see where 1 or 2 or 3 frameworks can be combined to make them more effective for psychographic segmentation. And that is one of the main reasons why I'm still praying for funding to set up this consumer research lab, because that is one of the main things that can help us to conduct research of this nature. Because you need to be able to have test environments within which to conduct these kinds of research, especially as they relate to consumers. So as far as I know, there are individual frameworks developed by different people. And as an organization or a marketer, you can decide which ones you want to pick and put together to be able to achieve your objectives. But currently, I'm not aware of any framework that combines 2 or more of these different frameworks.
That's then
So Doc,
Africa it is sad being the second largest producer of
Anaya, can you kindly
be corrected. Yes, Ghana has the
Sally, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm saying this is where industry needs to start looking at investing.
Yeah.
So that a lot of insights can come out of this.
Yeah, that's true. Because even looking at this framework, I realized that they completely left out the personality aspect.
Yeah.
Right? But there's also a framework that breaks down personality on its own, which I'm going to discuss in the next slide. So let me quickly go through that and then we can continue the discussion.
Okay. All right.
Okay. All right. So like I mentioned, this VALS framework just looks at the values, attitudes, and lifestyles. But remember, we mentioned that the psychographic includes values, attitudes, lifestyles, and personality traits. So there's a separate framework that looks at personality traits, right? And this is known as the Big 5 personality traits model. And this one actually rates the consumer's behavior based on 5 dimensions known as the OCEAN model. So OCEAN is an acronym standing for openness, conscientiousness, extraversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. And they usually rate them on a scale from one extreme to the other. So for instance, when we talk about openness, a consumer is either more closer towards the lower end of openness, or sorry, let me take it again. So when we are rating the consumers, for instance, based on openness, we rate them on a continuum. So they fall between 2 extremes. So a consumer that exhibits higher levels of openness is likely to be more inventive and curious. Whereas a consumer that exhibits more lower levels of openness is likely to prefer consistency and be more cautious in terms of their consumptions and purchases, right? Likewise for conscientiousness, a consumer that is more on the higher end of conscientiousness is efficient and very organized. Whereas one that is on the lower end of the spectrum for conscientiousness is easygoing and exhibits more of a careless attitude, right? Whereas we can talk about extraversion, where if a consumer is closer towards exhibiting high levels of extraversion, will be very outgoing and very energetic. And then on the lower end of the extraversion spectrum, be more solitary and reserved. And then under agreeableness, we can say that when a consumer is more on the high end of agreeableness, they are very friendly and compassionate. And on the lower end of the spectrum, they are challenging and more detached, right? Likewise for neuroticism. On the higher end of neuroticism, they are very sensitive and nervous. But on the lower end, they are secure and confident, right? So these are 5 main personality traits that can be used to break down consumer characteristics. But then again, this is not just what the consumer is about. Perhaps a consumer may be a conscientious person, more on the higher end, very efficient and organized, but may exhibit more of the characteristics of, say, a striver, right? Who is style conscious, imitative, and contemporary. So in that case, how do you sell to such a consumer? Now, we will not be able to break down the consumer and understand them on a more deeper level, like Saliu is saying, if we do not combine 1 or 2 or more of these psychographic segmentation variables. And again, with just these two psychographic variables, it is not enough. We can't stop there. We need to look into other forms of variables like demography, where we can bring in age and gender and income, as well as geography and other sets of variables that we are going to talk about. So it's a very complex thing to do. And I don't know if, Saliu, can you throw more light on how you are able to combine the different variables and which ones you combine at your company?
Madam, I'm smiling here.
Very complicated, isn't it?
If I may now,
yeah,
I wanted to add to your question for some. So please, MTN, what type do you guys use?
Thank you.
What kind of
That's what I also want to know.
Yeah.
Ivan. This is by
they use the multi-system.
Or we are going too far with you, Saliu. Are we going into the realms of intelligence?
I mean, these are borderline intelligence issues.
Okay, okay, then we'll leave it there.
Okay.
Then we'll leave it there, Saliu.
But just to answer it generally,
yes,
I would say we don't use one model to segment our customers.
Exactly, because I know that the combination of the different models and how deep you are able to go sometimes could be the source of your competitive advantage.
Exactly, and it's not something that it's not a static discussion. This is a discussion that we have almost every week.
Yeah,
and we challenging ourselves to come, because you need to understand your customers.
Yeah.
If you don't understand your customers, you cannot sell.
Yeah.
And that is, in fact, it's one of our competitive advantages that a lot of people don't realize.
Exactly.
It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of time.
That's true.
To be able to come up with products and services. So
that's true.
We'll just leave it at that.
Yes, I agree with you. I agree with you. So he has confirmed what I've said, that it is more complicated than it looks. Yeah. And it takes a lot of effort to get it done, and a lot of man hours, like he's saying, every week, right? Because like we said, the consumer is consistently evolving. They are not static, right? Chief Tano, you raised your hand, or your question has been answered.
Oh, yeah. Good afternoon, Doc.
Good afternoon, Chief.
Yeah. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please, I can.
I think the beverage industry uses a lot of this model, the personality and the values. Yes.
Yeah.
I once saw that of Diageo.
Yeah.
And they use a lot of these personality traits in determining what kind of product.
Yeah.
And how to market it to the various people.
Yeah.
And some brands where it's reserved for some people, and I see.
Oh, we've lost Chief there, but I think in essence we get a gist of what he was trying to say regarding the use of the different psychographic segments. So it seems psychographic segmentation is quite popular. And it adds on an extra layer to help some firms, like we have learned from Saliu, develop their own source of unique competitive advantage. So thank you for all those who gave their submissions. Now we'll move on to the next segmentation criterion, which is behavior segmentation. And I think this one is more straightforward than the psychographic and age and income issues, or demographics as we call them. Because these ones focus on whether people purchase a product or not, how much of it they purchase, and then how often they use it. So under this, we can talk of three main levels of behavior segmentation. The first one is usage rate. And here we can talk of heavy users, medium users, light users, or non-users. And I think in Ghana here, the telcos have been able to master this usage rate thing to a T. I think by nature of the big data that they are able to collect, they can tell the nature of the usage rate of various telecom products, especially the internet and the data bundles. So you realize that in recent times, there are lots of very creative data bundles that have been developed for different types of users, for heavy users, medium users, light users, and even depending on what you use your data mainly for as a heavy user. So for some people, the heavy use is mainly in terms of streaming. So they have a bundle to satisfy that. And then for the heavy users, for some people, it's mainly in terms of phone calls. They have a bundle to satisfy that. So for some people, it's just about social media. They have a bundle to satisfy that. So I think in terms of usage rates, the telcos have done very well of using that segmentation criterion to break down the market and design specific products and service to market to the customer bases. I think, Sally, MTN has done it, right? Because I know Vodafone has a number of creative packages like that. MTN too.
Yes, yes, Doc.
Yeah.
We have it. Even to app specific. We have bundles for app specific.
Yeah.
So it
yeah.
goes down to the app level.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that clarification. So that tells us the extent to which the usage rate can be taken, even to the app level, right? Then we can talk about usage occasion, where we can be able to determine the occasions within which people usually use the products. And this is basically considering the habits and trends of which people use different products. It's like when the rainy season approaches and then all of a sudden we see umbrellas everywhere. It's like, you know that around this time, this is the kind of product that people usually go in for. This is the kind of products that people usually purchase, and they are marketed as such. So we can talk about the way during Valentine's Day, we see a lot of beverage companies start advertising the champagnes, the alcohols, the flowers, the chocolates, the cakes, right? So depending on the usage occasion, you need to be able to market the product accordingly. Some products cut across all manner of usage occasions. So it is up to the firm to decide the segments that they are targeting and market to them accordingly using the usage occasion that will be relevant to them. So I know that a lot of the times when it is around Valentine's Day, a lot of the contraceptive adverts are targeted to the youth. Can someone correct me if I'm wrong?
It's true, madam.
Yes, they target it mainly at the youth. You will never see them talking about married couples in a contraceptive advert around Valentine's. They usually target the youth, tell them to stay safe, avoid STDs and all that. So this is a typical example of usage occasion and how firms are taking advantage of it. I also know that some companies like GTP have done an excellent job of using the usage occasion to sell their products. A most recent GTP advert that I saw tried to trace the use of GTP throughout the different occasions of life, including birth, playtime, outings, being at home, parties, marriages. They try to use the different occasions to be able to show how GTP can be relevant in all these different settings. So that's another example of how the usage occasion can be used to segment the market. And then finally, user status. Here, it is very clear to determine those who were using your product, those who are likely to use your product, those who are not using it at all, those who use it regularly, the first timers, as well as those who use your competitors' product. Again, this is a direct byproduct of big data. If you are able to analyze big data properly, it is very good at telling us who the potential users are, who the non-users are, ex-users are. And you realize that sometimes you are there and then you send, yes, Anna. Anne, please speak up.
Hi, Doc. Good
Hi,
afternoon.
yeah.
I want to clarify. So can we say that DKT, they are the producers of Fiesta condoms?
Yes.
So they advertise more when it's Easter.
Yes.
So when they're going to Kweo and all that. Can we say that's user education?
Yeah, because those are fun times, right?
Yes,
those are times where people are known to have a lot of fun, and the youth usually are the ones who participate mostly in these events. And it's known to be characterized by a lot of drinking and sexual activity, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So you're right. They use the usage occasion to
advertise.
Why are you guys laughing?
No, I'm laughing because it makes me sad.
Oh, no, why is it confused though? You are still confusing me the more.
But then that's when they actually get their numbers.
That's when they get their numbers. That's why I'm laughing. Like something that is such an endemic societal problem. And the marketer is making money off of it. It's not wrong, but it's sad.
It's fortunate.
Doc, are you saying it's not wrong? We are the issue of morality that we discussed.
Totally wrong.
Yeah, it depends on where you come from.
It depends on where you guys are coming from.
You see, as a marketer, I would never go and I'll never take up such a job and I'll market. No.
Oh, me, I would do.
But sex for young people is good though.
Ivan, what are you saying? What are you saying?
My sex is good.
Please.
Okay, so that's just by the way.
Ivan.
Responsibly.
Ivan, I like
there is nothing like responsibility. It's okay. Let's go.
Are you old?
Salute. Ivan.
Yes.
I think I like you.
I like you.
Papa, I'm an imam.
That's why you are a Santa.
I can't encourage this. I'm an imam.
Yeah.
Oh, Master, I can't get you.
For me.
Let's carry on.
So that's it for usage occasion. Thank you for that question. And for user status, like I was saying, companies now have software that they can use to tell them all these things. If the software does not even have the ability to tell them who their potential users are, at least it can tell them who their ex-users are, who their regular users are, their first-timers are. So they can be able to tell when the attrition rate is going higher or lower, or when they have to do more to keep certain customers to stay with them. Because I think the bankers know this very well. When you sign an account, it doesn't end there. You need to make sure you keep encouraging the customer to be putting money into their accounts, so that their account can be active. Otherwise, the person will become what do they call it? A dormant. The account will become dormant, and that is also not good for the books. So these are all ways by which institutions like the banks, like I have mentioned, are able to keep track of the customers that they have and still be able to go out and look for more customers to come, because they can tell who are first timers, who are regulars, who are those who are dormant, who are those who are ex-users. And sometimes even after you have stopped using your account for so many years, occasionally out of the blue, you find yourself receiving a phone call or a text message asking you why you left and if you would want to reactivate your account. I know I've received a call like that on several locations from GT Bank for one. And I think I had another, was it Bank of Africa? I can't remember, but they reach out occasionally to find out why your user status has changed. So these are all ways by which banks can and other organizations can segment the market, especially using user status. Because by knowing the person's status, you know how much effort you have to put in to either get them to become more active or to get them to sign on to start using your product or service. So that's it for behavior segmentation. Please, in the absence of any question or comment, we'll move on to the next session. Okay. So the next session we are going to discuss is about benefit sort segmentation. And this is basically based on the concept of value. When it comes to benefit sorts, customers would always want to get value for their money. And that is how marketers can target them. So global benefit segmentation focuses on the numerator of the value equation. And the value equation is benefit over price. So the approach is largely based on the marketer's superior understanding of the problem that their product solves, the benefits that it offers, or the issue that it addresses regardless of geography. Because whether you are selling the product in the Middle East or in the United Kingdom or in Europe or in the US, customers will always want to get top value for whatever minimum amount that they spend. So marketers have to appreciate the kind of value that consumers are looking for when purchasing specific products and services. And this has been inculcated into a lot of marketing strategies by several brands, such that from a branding perspective, marketers will come up with products that are within the same product line, but based on their quality and their formulation, appeal to different customer segments depending on the value that they are seeking and the price that they are willing to exchange for that value. So when people buy a product, they expect to get some form of value from it. And that is what has necessitated this entire value equation, and why brands and organizations are putting in place measures to ensure that they can target all customers who are expecting different levels of value from products and services. So to be able to explain this, we will discuss further what we refer to as the fair value line as we go along. But for now, we need to appreciate the value equation, being that when you are targeting, when you are segmenting the customer base, you need to be able to appreciate the level of value that each of them are looking for. And this is calculated as an outcome of the benefits that you are offering the customer divided by the price that you are asking them to pay for it. So that's it for benefit segmentation. And that brings us to the end of the segmentation portion of the STP process. Please, does anyone have anything they want to say before we go ahead? Okay. So the second level of the STP process is the targeting stage, which follows directly from the segmentation stage. And under targeting market segments is basically about assessing the market potential of the different segments that you came up with. Remember, in the segmentation section, we were exposed to different segmentation criteria that helped us to be able to divide the market into segments. But once again, our resources are not unlimited. So we may have come up with 10, 20, 30 segments that are probable options for the marketer to target. However, each of these market segments has a different level of potential in terms of how much products you can sell, how much market share you can earn, and how much clout you can actually get for your product or service in those segments. So in the targeting stage, the aim is to assess the market potential of each of the segments that you have identified to see how attractive they are in terms of your opportunities of selling your product and service and making profit. But at this stage, you want to sound a warning to global marketers that they need to be mindful of several potential pitfalls that are associated with the market segmentation process. And there are a number of these, which we are going to go through momentarily. First of all, there's a tendency for marketers to overstate the size and short-term attractiveness of individual country markets. Marketers sometimes get excited. And when they see some of the numbers and the way the numbers are looking, they get ahead of themselves and they try to put everything they have into that market based on that preliminary assessment. Hence the short-term attractiveness that we are talking about, without thinking about the potential of that market into the long term. So here we are saying that marketers need to think long and hard, regardless of how good the figures look today in the short term, of how the figures will look months or years down the line, before they go ahead to implement significant resources into that market to be able to try and sell their products and services to that segment. Also, shareholders or competitors exert pressure on management not to miss out on a strategic opportunity. And marketers need to be very careful of this, because it could be that the shareholders and the competitors see it as a remarkable opportunity that you need to take advantage of now. However, as a marketer, and a professional in your own right, you have done your research to know that perhaps this strategic opportunity they are seeing is not a long-lived one. Perhaps it's just a short-lived thing that if the company invests resources in, may lose in the long run. So marketers should be ready to take on shareholders and competitors who might exert pressure and force you into taking decisions that you know will not benefit your firm in the long run, or that you are not ready to take on. Please, has anyone had any experience where in your capacity as a marketer or in your position as a manager or a head of a department or unit, you have been forced to take that certain decisions out of your own better judgment because shareholders wanted you to, or because higher ups wanted you to, when you knew it was not the right decision to take at that moment? Has anyone had any such experience?
Yes, Doc, I have.
You have?
Chief Tano has.
Could you please share it with us?
Yeah. All right. My former company where I was working, I was the head of procurement.
Yes.
And we wanted to stock our own papers. It was a printing press, a big printing press, Type Company Limited.
Oh yeah, Type.
And we were buying from the local market. Yeah. If we brought the papers inside into the country ourselves, it will reduce our costs significantly.
Yeah.
So I led that research and I showed it to management. They agreed, and we started sourcing. But I told them one thing, that I think we should engage our local suppliers who have capacity more than us.
Yeah.
They are the industrial leaders, and they have serious connections. So let's go from a professional point of view.
Yeah.
This is what I recommend. That one, let's engage our top supplier. Let's give him our demands and our requirement on a monthly basis or quarterly basis, so that one, we don't rent a warehouse week or for the month. We can store it at our factory floor and use. Then we don't tie up capital. We have an account with him like that. Management thought otherwise. They went ahead for us to rent a warehouse. You know where Type is? Type is at Tesano.
Yeah.
We got a warehouse at Adenta, Rowi.
Wow.
And that's where we're storing everything. And if you look at how much we pay every 3 months for the year, it's so huge.
Yeah.
Our supplier saw that we were importing our own papers, and he got angry and went into commercial printing. Forward integration straight away.
Oh, wow.
One, we cannot compete with him because one, yes, JK.
Yeah.
JK. He produces yes. And the guy has grown 10 times in the last 5 years.
Yeah,
simply because of the move of Type. He called me and said, you guys want to collapse my business, I am also going to venture into printing. He told me straight away. And the guy, from a professional point of view, against management decision. Management's point of view was that one, they wanted to control the inflow and also to protect their sources, but it didn't help them.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing. That's a classic example. Saliu, please speak up. Saliu.
Yeah, Doc. In my previous role working with Globe, I think when we're discussing culture, I gave the example of a bundle that we were going to introduce in the market.
Yes,
and during the testing phase, we said the bundle was not good for the market.
Yeah.
So against every good advice, they went ahead and launched that bundle. By the time they figured out how to allow customers to be able to opt out of that bundle, they had gotten over 200,000 customers porting out.
Yeah.
So that's there was an opportunity that was seen, but it wasn't analyzed well. And against the best decisions, they still went ahead and it cost them.
Yeah. So I think yours combines the two. They saw a short-term attractive thing. They thought it would be be what will continue into the long term. And then they ignored all your warnings and went in and exerted pressure. And here they are now. So Saliu and Evans, thank you so much for those submissions. It really puts into perspective what we are discussing here with regard to the pitfalls of market segmentation. Okay. So third, we can also talk about management network of contact emerging as a primary criterion for targeting, right? So they rather go for convenience rather than rigorous market analysis. And again, this goes back to what we discussed in our last session. Market research, which is properly done, can never be overemphasized. So you can't just rely on sources that are convenient for you to find and think that that is what is going to give you the kind of information you need to take the gravity of decisions that you have to take. You need proper sources of information that are relevant and can be relied upon, but more than convenient sources that will give you some information that may not be the true picture of the situation that is on the ground. So these are some pitfalls of segmentation that we have observed that we need to look out for when we are assessing market potential. So in that case, what criteria do we need to take cognizance of when we are targeting? Here we are saying marketers can utilize 3 basic criteria. The first one is market attractiveness, being the current size of the market segment and the anticipated growth potential. Because like we said, it's not just enough to see how attractive the market or the segment looks in the short term. You need to be able to be sure that this attractiveness is going to be prolonged into the long term so that you can make returns into the future. We also can consider potential competition as part of the targeting criteria, because when the competition is too much for you to shoulder, it is not prudent to enter the market anyway when you know the level of competition in the market is cutthroat and you are likely to be submerged in all the confusion. And then thirdly, we also need to target based on company compatibility. And here we are looking at the compatibility and the feasibility of the company being able to successfully target this particular market segment and make good returns out of them. So we'll take them one after the other. Under market attractiveness, what are we asking? We are asking, is the market currently large enough to present us with the opportunity to make a profit? If the answer is no for today, are we saying that in the long term, the market stands to grow at an exponential rate such that if we enter now and we are not even making profit, there's the opportunity for us to make profit over the long term that will offset the losses that we are making now? If that is the case and the company is willing to take that risk, then you can go ahead and venture into such a market. But if currently the market is not large enough, and based on your forecast and your research, you can see that there's no way that the market is going to evolve or grow beyond the point at which it is now, then there's no need for you to go and invest in such a market segment. Now, an example is the Indian market, right? About 1.3 million cars are sold each year in India in absolute terms. And this is a relatively small number considering the number of people who are in India. However, previously, India was behind China, which was the largest market for cars, right? But now they are slowly overtaking China, such that industry observers have forecasted that the market in India will expand to 3 million cars within the decade. So being a marketer for a car company, you are asking yourself, okay, they are saying within the next decade, the market is going to expand to 3 million cars. That is not reason enough for you to jump headfirst in and say, okay, then we are all going into that market. You need to look at other factors too, like the competition, which you're about to discuss, and your capabilities as a company. However, you need to be able to objectively assess whether or not there's the potential for the company to make profit in that market segment, not just within the short term, but for the long term. And that is the key focus of market attractiveness. Next, we can talk about potential competition. And like I said, the fact that the market is attractive is not enough for you to jump headfirst into selling in that market. You need to think about the potential competition. So if a market segment or a country market that you are targeting is characterized by strong competition, it may be a segment to avoid. especially when you are not one of the strongest players who has enough resources and network to be able to survive the competition that is taking place. But there are certain markets where, based on research, you can be able to identify that the competition is vulnerable in some aspects. Sometimes it is in terms of specific elements of the marketing mix, like price or their quality, or perhaps their distribution. And these are possible gaps that you as a newcomer can come in with your global marketing strategy to fill in and turn to a source of competitive advantage for your firm. Now, to be able to assess the competitive environment in a given market, we can use one of the timeless frameworks that we have been using to analyze the marketing environment, which is Porter's 5 forces, right? And this tells us the main 5 forces that are at play in the market and how we can be able to analyze them to determine our position going in and whether or not we will be able to survive in that market segment. So this is an example of a Porter's 5 forces analysis for a US paperboard manufacturing industry, right? And in Porter's 5 forces, we have 5 main forces, namely the barriers to entry, the buyer's bargaining power, the threat of substitutes, the supplier's bargaining power, and then the existing rivalry among the competitors who are currently within the market segment. Now, for this particular industry, we can see that barriers to entry are very high. So as a global marketer, you know from the onset going into such a market that you have a few hurdles to go over. And they're saying that barriers to entry are very high because, first of all, there's a high level of capital intensity. So as we will discuss very soon under company capabilities, looking at your capabilities as an organization, if you do not have the amount of capital that is required to break into this market, it is not worth trying because already you know that the barriers to entry are high. However, the buyer's bargaining power is very low. So the analysis is telling us that the products are mainly standardized and there's low switching costs, right? So that means that if you enter the market, there's the likelihood that if you do not sell your products at a low price or peg it at a competitive price that is around the minimum, there's a high likelihood that you can be losing customers willy-nilly because the switching costs are very low. And there are a large number of small localized buyers and very few large buyers with their own paperboard mills. So that means that you are competing for small pockets of a market segment where you have small buyers who are buying in small quantities and few large buyers, meaning that you have to sell a lot to make profit rather than selling to one client and making a huge return. So that again, to me, may be something that will be a letdown for someone who's trying to enter this market. Again, they are talking about the threat of substitutes being low to medium. So that should be a plus for an organization that is entering this market because then there are few substitutes that perhaps will threaten the existence of the product or service that you're trying to sell. However, the suppliers have medium bargaining power, meaning that the suppliers can, in one way or another, influence your business and the activities that you are performing within the industry. So suppliers are a group of people to look out for because they can either make or make your business in the new market that you are entering. But above all, it says that the rivalry among existing competitors is very high. There are numerous and diverse rivals, high fixed costs, low differentiation, low switching costs, all of which are a recipe for disaster for a firm that is now entering a market and trying to find their feet. So for me, looking at this Porter's 5 forces analysis for this industry, if I were a business owner in this industry, I will not enter the US market because everything as is explained here is already designed to set you up to fail. So that is a typical example of how as a firm you can be able to assess the potential competition in your market and then know how to go about your strategy for entering the market, whether you decide not to enter at all or decide to use a particular entry mode that will help you to be able to find your feet and gain better grounding in terms of situating your business so that you do not end up at a loss. So an example that is given here is that of the photocopy market in the US. Now, Xerox was the first company to introduce photocopiers. And at that time, they were so novel in terms of photocopying and the way that it was being done with their machines that in the US, Xerox became synonymous with photocopy. So if someone was going to photocopy a document, they would say they were going to Xerox a document. But then there was a large gap in the market in the sense that Xerox photocopiers were largely huge photocopiers of industrial capacity. And there was nothing that could serve the small individual customer who perhaps wanted to photocopy a few sheets of paper or one sheet of paper or one document every now and then. So Canon quickly noted a gap in the market, even though the competition was severe, because for the competitor to have their name being synonymous with the product category, it tells you how intense the competition would be. But Canon was smart enough to identify a gap in terms of their delivery. And that was the fact that they did not have compact copiers that could serve smaller individual consumers like secretaries and managers who occasionally wanted to photocopy 1 or 2 sheets of paper. And that is how Canon was able to outflank Xerox and introduce their photocopy machines into the market. And now Canon is one of the industry leaders in that sector. So this is a classic way of being able to break down the forces in terms of competition in the industry that you're operating in within the foreign market, and being able to find a niche for yourself that will help you to stay competitive without actively taking on your competition. And that is it for potential competition as the second criteria for targeting market segments. Now, the third segment, the third criteria under targeting market segments that we are going to talk about is company capability. And like I mentioned earlier, the company needs to think about whether they can and should target that market, because perhaps the market may be attractive enough. You may be able to sell in the short term and still be able to make good profits into the long term. And also the competition is not such that they are going to drown your business, but you will be able to find a way to survive. But it all boils down to your capabilities as a company. And here marketers must decide how well the product that they are serving or the business model that they are currently operating in their domestic market can be able to fit in or survive in the foreign markets that they are going into based on a number of criteria. For instance, they need to ask themselves, will adaptation of the product be required? And I think when it comes to global marketing, this is a pivotal question that marketers need to ask themselves, because we know from experience and the discussions that we have had in class that it is not every consumer that is similar to the consumer that you have in your domestic market. So there's the likelihood that they will not like the product in its current form as you are selling it to your domestic customers. So in most cases, there may be some level of adaptation that you have to do to be able to make sure that the consumers in the new market segments in the foreign country will be able to buy the product and service that you are selling. If so, as a firm, you need to ask yourself, is this economically justifiable in terms of the expected sales volume? Because usually as marketers, we also try to forecast how much sales we are going to make in the market, what price we should sell it at, in terms of whether we are aiming at breaking even or making a profit or making losses. We need to be able to determine all these things. So as a firm, you need to ask yourself, is it economically justifiable, this expected sales volume? Depending on whether you are looking to break even in the first few months and then make profits after, or you're expecting to make losses in the beginning, then break even, then make profit. All these things have to be considered when it comes to looking at the company's capability to be able to effectively target specific market segments. Companies also need to think about import restrictions. We learned this about the Indian market in Apple, where all the parts and hardware that were not manufactured in India were subjected to very high tariffs when they were being imported into the country. So the marketer who is marketing in this global market needs to ask themselves whether import restrictions, high tariffs, or perhaps the home currency value as compared with the currency value of the destination, will it affect the product or service that they are trying to go and sell in the target market? Because depending on the value of the home currency and how we peg the price of the product, it may or may not dampen the demand for the product in the foreign market that we are trying to enter into. So these are two main criteria that marketers need to ask themselves when it comes to company capability. Of course, there are others in terms of resource requirements, capital, among other things. But in essence, we are saying that you as a company need to look within to your strengths and weaknesses, and whether or not you are properly positioned to take full advantage of these market segments that you have identified and to target them to be able to sell to them and make profit. And with that, we come to the end of the targeting level of the STP process. We started with the segmentation, followed by the targeting, and now we are heading into the positioning element of the STP process. Before we go ahead, please, does anyone have anything they want to say? Any question they want to ask or contribution? The floor is open. Are we all okay then?
Yes, we are.
Okay. All right. So then let's go straight into positioning. Aliu? Okay.
No, I said yes, please.
Okay. All right. So let's go straight into positioning. So once we are able to segment the market and then we are able to target, the targeting will help us to be able to determine which markets we can effectively segment and enter into based on our capabilities and then the level of competition that exists therein. We now move to position our brands or our organization. Now, positioning involves creating brand associations in the customer's minds to make them perceive your brand in a specific way. Now, yes.
Sorry, please, a question just came to my mind. I'm so sorry.
Please go ahead.
When it comes to targeting, right?
Yes.
What would affect your targeting in a time like this when there's been a pandemic? So if you are entering a market, what would be the effect of something like something that is so global like this in the targeting of your customers?
Yeah, this global pandemic has affected everything from market attractiveness to competition to even the firm's capabilities. So it affects every aspect of your targeting criteria to the point where, one, it has affected the potential attractiveness of the market in the sense that a lot of borders are closed. They are not letting products and services in or out. People have become skeptical of spending money because a lot of people have lost their jobs. So at that point, the market is not so attractive. Does it make sense?
Yes, please.
Good. Again, when it comes to competition, even the competitors are dying out. They are struggling to survive.
Yeah.
So you that you are now entering, what chances do you have? Except you are offering something that is unique to the era of the pandemic that people don't have a choice than to use. For instance, in Ghana here, during the pandemic, delivery companies started making a lot of money.
Yeah.
And companies that were largely operating online. Because people were stuck at home, they were bored, they had nothing doing. So they were just online shopping. So they shop and then the delivery companies deliver. To the point where online companies were looking for delivery companies to deliver their products and they were not finding. So people who were not even in that business at all of a sudden started opening delivery companies. So the whole pandemic that we are facing has affected almost every aspect of the targeting criteria to the point where it is to other people's advantage and then it is to other people's disadvantage. So you need to make sure that looking at your capabilities, you venture into areas and target markets that you can effectively serve given the constraints that the pandemic has created for all of us. Please, does it make sense?
Yes, please.
Good.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Ivan. Okay. So moving on with the positioning. I was mentioning that positioning involves creating brand associations in customers' minds to make them perceive your brand in a specific way. Now, this is necessary because in any product category or service category, there are several other brands that are also operating within these categories. And they are all competing for the attention of the same consumer that you are targeting. So positioning is a way by which the marketer for the specific brand is able to create and occupy a unique position in the mind of the consumer, such that when it comes to the consumer looking for a product or service within that category to satisfy a need, your brand of product or service is what will come to mind first for them to choose. So an effective positioning strategy would maximize the customer value and relevance, being the value that they offer the customer and how relevant their brand is to the customer, as well as how distinct they are from their competitors, using points of parity and points of difference. Now, when we talk about points of parity and points of difference, points of parity refer to the characteristics that your brand possesses that are similar to those of other competitors in the same category. Whereas the points of difference are the characteristics that your brand possesses that are unique to you, that other competitors in the same category do not possess. So when it comes to points of parity and points of difference, a lot of our marketing strategy in terms of pricing, marketing communication, product design, distribution, all of these rely on the concept of point of parity and point of difference to make us unique from our competitors. So depending on the organization's strategy and how they wish to go about it, they can decide to peg their points of parity and points of difference perhaps in the realm of price, or in the realm of their promotion and advertising, or in the realm of product design, or perhaps in the realm of distribution. So that in a nutshell explains the nature that a positioning strategy can take when the global marketer is thinking of how to make their brand stand out from the multitude of competitors out there in the market. So there are different kinds of positioning strategies. But recent research has identified 5 useful global marketing positioning strategies. And these include positioning based on attribute or benefit, positioning based on quality and price, positioning based on the use or user, positioning based on competition, and then positioning based on global, foreign, and local consumer culture. And we will take up each of these one after the other. Let's first start with positioning based on attribute or benefit. Now, this is the most frequently used positioning strategy where brands exploit a particular product attribute, benefit, or feature and use that as the basis for differentiating themselves from their competitors. Now, they can highlight things like economy, reliability, and durability, which are most frequently used by marketers to be able to distinguish themselves in terms of attributes and benefits that consumers will gain from their brand against their competitors. So for instance, we have brands like Volvo that have managed to create an attribute for themselves that is world-renowned. And Volvo automobiles are known for their solid construction and offering safety to car occupants in every event of a crash. So when you ask anyone about the world's safest car, they'll tell you it's Volvo. Please, who has heard this thing before? That Volvo is the world's safest car?
Look, I have.
Aha.
Volvo,
yes.
safety first.
Yes. But the sad thing is, it's not a very popular car in our market.
Yes, because of how they marketed it.
Are you sure? Because when you ask, I have a colleague who did something on car brands in Ghana. And according to him, based on the findings of their research, people don't buy Volvo because they don't get the parts.
Well, it's true. Yes, yeah, it is true. From the early 70s to 90s and so, that was it. Then we didn't have dealership in Ghana. But those things have changed now. Those things have changed now.
So we can get Volvo parts in Ghana.
Yes.
They're expensive.
They're very expensive. Yeah.
Madam, it is very expensive in Cape.
Yeah.
But you can't get it from the, what do you call it, Abuso kind place.
Yeah. Yeah.
People would prefer to go to Abosso Khan and to go to and buy in dealership. How many
That's
people
true.
go to dealership?
That's true. That's
I
true.
understand you. Yeah. Okay.
So,
I do understand you.
so all these things go ahead to contribute to the image they have created for themselves. So it's not a car that you can easily go to Abosso Khan and get a part and come and tinker with. And all that serves to enhance the image of safety that they have created for their brand. So I think it's spot on with their branding. Another example we can talk about in terms of attributes and benefits is BMW. BMW is positioned as the ultimate driving machine, right? Which signifies high performance. So currently, all those who want high performance cars usually buy a BMW or they'll buy a Mercedes-Benz. But I think it's also a function of the age group that you find yourself in. Because BMWs generally do not appeal to younger people.
Yes, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Samwatano and Co will drive it.
But I think that is changing with the new smaller versions of the BMW, like the X1 and the. Recently, I saw a group of young men driving a particular kind of BMW called the F3.
The 1 Series, there's an X3.
Exactly. They were driving the F3 and they called themselves the F3 gang.
S3 gang.
No, F3 gang.
F3 gang.
Yes, they have a Facebook page and everything. I ran into them at Airport Shell.
The BMW.
Myself, where from all these plenty BMW cars? And they were in like a motorcade.
And they come with motors, the BMW bikes today. They come all the way across the Tama and beyond. They go on cross country.
Exactly.
Same here.
So I'm like, well, perhaps now because of the attribute of performance, it is being made attractive to a younger segment. Yes, please speak up. It says iPhone. I don't know who it is.
Yeah, madam, it's Irene.
Hi, Irene.
Also, yeah. Hi, Doc. I think that aside, I mean, you said something like it appeals to much older generation. I think with BM, the pricing is also part.
Yeah.
Because the 3 Series is not a car that's mostly used by the older generation, but it's quite expensive. So people within our age brackets usually cannot afford, and the maintenance is quite high. So yeah,
that's true. Thank you for that, Irene. It's very true. So that's it for the BM, but they've managed to position themselves as high performance. And for those who can afford, I'm here to hear someone who will complain about using a BMW. So perhaps they are spot on with their positioning. Did someone say something? Oh, Lydia, so you're Corolla for life.
I said, this is Della.
Yes, Della, please speak up.
Yeah, I said it's very true because I used to drive the 3 Series, and when you sit in the car and you are moving, you know you are in a car.
Wow.
It's a machine. That one.
Yeah.
Especially when you are traveling. Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm told it's good for long distance.
Oh my God, it's very good.
Those of us using Corolla, we have a horse or something.
Oh no. Corolla is
there's a vast difference between the Corolla Hyundai and the rest that we use, the Toyotas and things. There's a difference between that and the drive of the BM. Like the drive is superb. Like it's so on point. It's so smooth and really nice.
Yeah.
Solid.
Because
it is solid on when it's
big,
moving.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's
very solid
on the ground.
Yeah. It doesn't. The actions of the tire adjust. You see the tire track to adjust on the ground so that you don't skip.
Yeah. And the steering too is good. Then it also doesn't wobble like Corolla and Co. When you go beyond 160,
140, like 140,
it starts to wobble. No.
Wow. So can we see what
because it has very huge tires. The tires are big and they're very solid. Yeah.
Can I tell you a typical consumer behavior characteristic that we are exhibiting? They have actually positioned themselves in our minds. Do we see how we are talking about them?
Yeah.
Everything we are saying is high performance. So they've done their job. The positioning is spot on. We are actually testifying the high performance that they say they are. So that's a classic case of how a company can position themselves using their attributes, right? Let's do one more example. Yes.
Dog. Yes. Mine. Okay. I want to deviate a bit.
Please go ahead.
Deviate. With OMO. You see, if anybody walks into a provision shop and then I say, oh, I want OMO, he or she might be referring to another washing powder.
Yes.
That is alone, my brother.
So, my challenge is OMO is not doing enough to capitalize on that, because we say OMO, but we don't mean OMO.
Yeah, that's true. I even think the OMO of old is not the OMO of today.
Oh, they are good. It's still good.
But it's very strong.
It depends on what you are washing. They have different types. It depends on what you are washing with. It's supposed to be used for white things. You are not supposed to use it for colored things. So.
You see. So they managed to build.
They bought the sunlight pink for you to be able to wash the color.
Good. But Unilever has not done a good job of breaking it down for us to understand this. For me, I know.
It is true.
But they have not done a good job of breaking it down for us. Even though
Doc,
please go ahead.
Oh, you go ahead, finish.
Oh, no. I was saying that even though OMO has been able to build a strong position that their name is synonymous with the category of washing powder, they have still not been able to clarify for us how the different brands that they have introduced subsequently feed into the whole OMO brand. So today there are people who think that OMO is produced by somebody else and Sunlight is also by somebody else.
They're the same thing. I tried it and I was just doing test. And I realized the pink one is good for the...
You see? Nobody explained to you. Chief, please go ahead.
Our time, the OMO we used was blue. Yes. You remember?
Yes.
Yeah.
This one, Governor and the Generation Z people, they don't know.
Came to meet also used blue.
Now they have the blue has been used as something they have put inside.
Yeah, like the specs. Some specs in it. Yes, I don't even know what it does. But I've stopped using OMO.
Oh, you should use it.
Because I washed a lot of colored stuff. I needed something that could wash everything.
Soap.
No, not by hand. I use washing machine a lot.
Washing machine, okay, you have to use the other soap.
You can boil the key soap. You can boil the
white key soap and use it for your washing machine, surprisingly.
Hello, Doc.
Yes, please speak up.
So, this is Nicholas. Please, are you aware of OMO Auto?
Pardon?
Are you aware of OMO Auto for washing machines?
No, I'm not.
She's aware. OMO Auto for...
Okay, so, yes, so that one is specifically for machines.
Oh.
Okay, and
can you wash both colored and white?
No.
Yes. Both colored and white.
Face the colored one. So the sunlight.
Lucy, please take your time and listen to him. Lucy, listen to him. This one,
expert.
It's not.
You are talking to the expert.
So allow him.
An expert is talking.
It says our colored clothes where you use the OMO Auto white. So if you use
can complain about that, but let him talk.
Lucy,
please let's give Nicholas the floor.
Lucy, please, are you listening? The sunlight pink, you can't use it for machines, please.
No, there's an auto one. There's an auto sunlight pink.
Please, are you listening? Yes, I know. But what we introduce, but please, hello, are you listening?
Yes.
What we introduce into Ghana is for the all purpose, both for colors and this and any color at all, colored cloth at all, you can use it on. And it's in terms of harshness, it's also a bit lower than the one we use for hands. Now, the complaint about it being harsh, yes, we are aware. It's something that we are working on. It's that when you change the formulation, it's also going to affect something else. So yes, we are aware of that, and we are working in that direction, please.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question, Nicholas. So it means that the OMO Auto you have in the Ghanaian market, you don't get to get the you usually get the foreign ones, and then you get the Sunlight Auto and then the white, the yellow ones.
Exactly. We are aware of those foreign ones. We are aware.
What do you do about it? Because those ones are the ones most of us find in the supermarkets to buy. So it's difficult to find the Ghanaian one on the supermarket because I always check the, how do you call it, the maker, and I don't see the Ghanaian one. So it's up to you people to start making a lot of inroads into the supermarket for them to buy the, for them
sure,
to buy.
we'll look into that. But
provision shops.
I think you have found yourself a very loyal customer.
Yeah, and I'm happy for that. Only though I'm a bit concerned when you said Omo, the thing is, we tried working on it. The major problem on Omo now is our pricing.
Yeah.
And the likes of Claysoft and Co all came in.
And the mother and the...
Exactly. I mean, it's something that we are aware. You go outside, you see a lot of people carrying these big washing powders.
Yeah. The foreign
price. Exactly. So that's what we are looking at. So please, we are aware of all that. But trust me, it's still as good as how it used to be, please.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Thank you. If I buy a Ghana Omo Auto and I wash my color, it will fade. If you fade, you pay for it.
Lucy, it's okay. Go and drink.
Go and take your medicine.
But she's not going to switch just because of this thing. I'm sure she just buy.
That's why she's expressing all her grievances.
Yeah.
She's loyal for life.
Yeah.
My mother, you won't buy any other soap apart from Unilever soap, so that's what happened. So she's ready.
Okay. So the tradition goes on.
Yes, the tradition goes on. So let's look at one last one, and this one is a very popular one. There's an ongoing credit card war, and I think it is still ongoing because MasterCard has managed to gain some ground in Ghana, but they are still not as popular as Visa. I remember I opened a Prudential account some years back, and they gave me a GH Link card, and I said, in this day and age, Muma Visa, GH Link na Muma. That was what I said in my head, but that tells us how popular Visa has become, and it is actually the aim that they had from the onset to position themselves based on the attribute of being everywhere for any kind of payment with any merchant. So Visa is another long-standing organization that has been able to position themselves based on their attribute. Please, how many people here own a MasterCard? Della, please speak up.
Yeah, but I think, sincerely, I think MasterCard will catch up because for us, with my company, for instance, our first option to every customer is MasterCard.
Wow.
And then even our corporate clients.
Incentive to make you do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Because with the plastics, MasterCard is, the offer MasterCard is giving us, when you compare in terms of pricing, is lower than that of Visa.
Okay.
So the more MasterCard we give to our customers, the more profit we make.
Interesting.
So Visa needs to watch out some of these few things that MasterCard is really doing, because our first card we give
their marketing game.
Yes.
By hitting them from the pricing angle.
Yes, the pricing is very good. Even the charges.
Yeah.
Thank you for that submission, Dela. Ivan, please speak up.
Yeah, I think for me, from practice, I own both of them.
Okay.
But the perception that MasterCard is expensive and it's for expensive things.
That's true. I've heard it.
Yeah, Visa looks more like, everyone has access to it.
Yeah.
And perception that in traveling, when you travel, you have more access to Visa than MasterCard.
Yeah.
And I think MasterCard is much more popular in America than in a lot of places. So
that's true. That's true. So that again boils down to the fact that they have been able to position themselves properly on being everywhere for every payment need. So thank you for that, Ivan, for sharing that. So apart from the attributes or benefits, we can also talk about quality and price. And this one is a very popular positioning strategy that a lot of the brands use. It is where they think of themselves in terms of quality and price along a continuum. So you find a lot of brands having different products on different levels of the continuum that offer value to different types of customers depending on how much they have to spend. So we can talk about brands like Samsung who have lower end
versions for an acceptable quality like NASCO to offer to those who cannot afford to buy the high-end Samsung. Apple is also trying to do that by increasing the amount of value that they can offer to different groups of customers by introducing a cheaper version of the iPhone in their minds, the iPhone SE, which still to some people is very expensive. But these are ways by which brands are trying to position themselves based on quality and price. And like I said earlier, when we were talking about the value equation being benefits divided by price, we use that formula to explain what we call the customer value map. And here we try to position the amount of value that a brand offers a customer using the relative price of the product as against the perceived quality that the price offers. And ideally, every firm should aim to provide value to customers along what we call the fair value line. So we do not want you to provide substandard products as a marketer. We want you to at least aim for economy. So you go from economy all the way to premium, and anywhere in between these two extremes is fair game. That's why we have customers buying different products from the same brand at different price points, at different levels of quality. So again, I use this example, the Samsung NASCO juxtaposition. Samsung is more towards the premium end of the fair value line, whereas NASCO is more towards the economy end. We can also talk about LG and Boom, where Boom is more towards the economy end, and then LG is more towards the premium end. And then we can have brands too who have all across the fair value line, and brands too that situate themselves on one extreme end of the fair value line. So we can talk about brands like Infinix that operate more from economy towards the middle. They do not get all the way up to premium, where we can position brands like Apple, right? And we have Samsung stretching all across the spectrum, where they have everything from economy all the way to premium. Now, anything outside of this line will provide either extreme inferior customer value or extreme superior customer value. There are brands that offer services outside of the fair value line in the realms of superior customer value and inferior customer value. However, it is best for firms to market their products along the fair value line so that they can ensure that they are satisfying as many different customer segments as they can, meeting different price points, and getting as much returns as they can from the different market segments that they sell. So that is it for quality and price, and then working along the fair value line. Next, we can talk about use or user. And here, brands position themselves based on a specific kind of user or a specific kind of use for the product or service that they are selling. So here, they position the product such that it's supposed to use to perform a particular task. And this associates the brand with a particular kind of user or class of users. So like we just realized with the BMW, there's a certain class of people who can buy it in terms of their financial strength and then their age group. The same goes for the classic Mercedes-Benz. There are certain people who can afford a Mercedes-Benz, and there are certain class of people who drive a Mercedes-Benz. Likewise, yes, Ivan, please speak up.
I said Mercedes is the car we should be talking about. BMW, they forget that one.
Benz and Kwani demo. Benz is my car.
So you can have someone in this world that, as part of their self-actualization, their main aim is that after pension, they are saving towards buying their first and only BMW, like they call pension, but the BMW
Benz, car they no any Benz.
Yeah, we have Benz and the other cars.
And the other
yes, before you realize, madam, before you realize you are driving at 150.
Yeah.
You don't. You relax driving it. Yeah, I've used Benz for a long time.
On the road.
Yeah. Solid.
Someone is mentioning Maybach. Maybach
it is durable. Durable. That's higher.
Maybach is higher end Benz.
Benz JJ. Benz a 30 years Christ Benz.
Yeah.
Good.
The only car at them.
So that's a typical example of a car that
it can never reach the extent of Benz. I'm sorry.
Don't worry, our Corollas are Benz. So what's your problem? It's a mind. Mind.
We are here. I'm part of the Corolla squad.
Yeah. Our Corollas are Benz, so we like it like that.
When you're driving, imagine you're in a Benz. That's all you're going.
That's all. But the driving is seamless, Charlie.
Yes, please. So we can see, like, typically how specific products are positioned based on use and user. Harley Davidson was always so enamored as a motorcycle, but now thankfully they have opened a shop in Accra here. So people are now using the Harley Davidson.
Yeah, airport.
Yes.
Airports.
Yes. And they are some of the high-end motorcycles you can ever get, and they are custom built. So you can put in every spec that you want, how you want it to be, but it comes at a hefty price tag. So you have to be a specific kind of person to be able to have one, right? So that is a typical example of positioning based on use and user. Next, we can talk about positioning based on competition. And this one is a classic, fun way by which some brands choose to market their products. And in doing this, they try to implicitly or explicitly reference their competitors when they are creating their own position. And in doing that, they are able to leverage some of the good name that their competitors have built for themselves and use it to build their own. So in this type of positioning, the firm would, or the brand would directly compare themselves or maybe imply the comparison with their competition. And because their competition perhaps is very well known, it will help them to be able to draw attention to themselves. And this classic back and forth has been going on between a lot of brands. For instance, the Body Shop started this in the skincare industry, where there was a time where every skincare company was testing on animals and using a lot of artificial chemicals in their products. So Body Shop positioned themselves by telling the whole world that they are a natural skincare brand. No animal testing. They use recyclable containers and everything, which was an implicit jab against the other cosmetics companies like the Unilevers who were manufacturing Gandos and who were doing animal testing. Another classic example of positioning based on competition is what Pepsi and Coca-Cola have been doing for several decades now. They've just been throwing jabs at each other in their print and TV adverts, right? So let me show you a typical example of one such advert and tell me where the jab at the competition is coming in. Please, can someone explain this? This is a classic jab. Can someone tell me where the jab is coming in? Where are they jabbing each other here in this advert? Please put on your marketing thinking caps.
Madam, it's a play with colors.
That's the first one. That's the first one. But that one is not even so obvious. There's one here that is very obvious.
The different types of Pepsi.
Hello, madam.
Good. The different types. Because Coca-Cola has Coke Max, like the Coke Zero.
Yes.
Have Diet
Coke Zero, Pepsi Zero, and they have the
Good. Good. That's another very, very explicit one. There's another one. Who can spot it?
Open happiness.
Open happiness. They say what? Happiness is a word. Choice.
A choice.
And then they had hashtag, just so you know. And this is very legal, very much allowed. In fact, this is what makes the marketing and advertising fun. Because usually when they do this, Coca-Cola also has a response.
Yeah.
So the back and forth keeps going, and they keep, so because of that, Pepsi has now become almost as well known as Coca-Cola. And in some markets, Pepsi is the market leader, especially when you go to Latin America. They drink a lot of Pepsi. So this is a prime example of how certain brands can use their competitors to position themselves in the minds of customers. So if you see this, definitely Coca-Cola will come to mind. And now every time Coca-Cola comes to mind, you remember this thing, and then you remember Pepsi as well. Let's look at another one.
Where is the jab coming in? This one, they didn't mention any names, but the thing is so clear.
Big Mac.
Yes.
Big Mac is McDonald's.
Aha. But they didn't mention McDonald's name.
Yeah.
They're just saying Big Mac seems more like a medium. It means it's, they're trying to say it's not that big.
They are very cheeky for these people.
So every time you're going to buy a Big Mac, you'll be thinking that I can get something bigger.
Yeah, something.
But if you look at this thing, if you look.
Lucy, what are you saying? Please speak up.
That is making it big, but they are making noise.
No. In actual sizes, the Whopper is bigger than the Big Mac. The Big Mac is not that big, but it's called Big Mac.
Yes, they just call it Big Mac because of the meat in it.
Yeah, it's not that big.
Not that big at all. So you see, this is fairly legal. It's not like they are telling a lie. When you actually go and buy a Big Mac and a Whopper and you compare, you see that one is definitely bigger than the other. Lydia says Pepsi is still 1 cedi. Another jab at Coca-Cola. Right? So these are examples of how the competition can be used to position certain brands in the minds of consumers, because their competition are also advertising. So once they are able to peg themselves against their competition, it puts them in the game, and the consumer has them at the top of their minds. Now, lastly, we are going to talk about global, foreign, and local consumer culture position. And we'll first take global consumer culture position, also known as GCCP. And this is basically a strategy where a brand as a symbol of a particular global culture or segment that is used in a standardized manner across board. So you realize that certain categories of products lend themselves very well to this kind of positioning, because here there's no clear differentiation. The brand treats the entire globe as one market and they target them as such. So when you see Nike in the US, it's the same as the Nike that you will buy from Ghana, the same as the Nike that you will buy from Nigeria. Anywhere at all you see Nike, it is Nike. The same for Apple. There's no level of adaptation or modification of the product. It is standardized. The Air Max that you will buy from the US, if you bring it here, to be the same Air Max that you will buy. Nothing has been changed to be able to make it specific for the global market, for the local market. So you realize that the positioning is more of a global one, where everywhere you go across the globe, you will get almost the same thing, right? And this thrives on high levels. Yes.
Doc.
Yes.
With the Nike bid, what happens to the synthetic? Because you see some that is written Nike, all right, with a symbol and everything, but it's not as original as one.
Our brothers and sisters who are in the other place. Our brothers and sisters in that extreme part of the world.
Like, yeah, you will see the same Nike and everything, but
yeah, they manufactured it. Nike has nothing to do with it. So in this case, I'm talking about authentic Nike.
Oh, okay.
Because even in China, they have levels of the imitation. They have grade 1, grade 2, grade 3.
And need everyone is there.
So here we are talking about the owners of the brand themselves and the products that they produce and sell.
Okay.
Yes, please. Okay. So after the global consumer culture position, we can also talk about foreign consumer culture position. And this one associates the brand users and use occasions or product origins with a particular foreign country. I remember at some point in time, in fact, there's still currently a craze about American cars. Now, this foreign consumer culture positioning could sometimes be conveyed with subtlety or could be very overtly communicated. So for instance, like I said, there are certain cars that are known to be American. And when they say a car is American, it means it is big, it is spacious, consumes a lot of fuel, has big, please, am I wrong?
Oh, no, you are right. It has a lot of features, convenient.
You are right.
Features.
You're on the you're on the right track.
So typical cars that are associated with Americanness is like the GMC, the Cadillac, and the Escalade. The American cars. They are not it's not communicated overtly that it's an American, but everybody knows and associates the culture of Americans with these cars because of the way the cars come. And then we have where the foreign consumer culture is overtly communicated in brands like IKEA, who actually incorporated the Swedish flag into their logo. So we can see that when we look at the Swedish flag and we look at the IKEA logo, the colors are basically the same, signifying that IKEA is a Swedish brand and it is authentic Swedish furniture that you are buying when you go to IKEA. So that is a typical example of foreign consumer culture positioning. Then we can even also talk about the Italian shoes that now the Kumasi Swami people are putting on all their slippers. Has anyone bought one of those slippers before?
Yes.
Yes, Della and Lucy.
They are one of the best slippers you can ever have.
But my problem is, why do they choose white made in Italy on it?
Comfort.
That is a problem I've been asking them.
Made in Italy on something so
The
good.
problem is with us, not them.
Exactly.
From Swami, you won't buy. But when you see from Italy, you want to buy.
And Doc.
Yes.
Don't be surprised that some of these Kumasi made shoes are sold in the big time boutiques in Accra here.
I agree.
At higher prices.
I agree totally.
Yeah.
Oh,
So that's why they made in Italy and all those things.
Yeah, I agree with you totally.
At very high prices.
Yeah.
Because Ghana made some slippers, I think, are one of the best you can ever have.
Very quality.
Very
quality. In Italy, we will not buy.
Yes, they are Phromosis, very quality.
Yeah.
Okay, Opa. In that case, why do they put the Zanotti and Ferragamo symbols and things on their slippers?
Seriously, Sabago and Co.
Exactly. That's my question, because you have a quality products that you can easily sell. So why?
One interesting thing, there's this, I used to have this, my boss, he can't get his shoe size on the market. So most of his shoes were made in Kumasi by someone, guy being Kumasi for it. And you think it's from America, and it lasts long. His legs are so big that they are so big, and he can't find the shoes. So all his shoes are made.
Your phone is ringing.
Let it ring.
And, Madam, I think the made in Italy thing was incorporated in them by the boutique sellers.
Yeah.
Boutique owners.
Yeah.
And then they realized, yes, because there are so many places in Kumasi, when you go and they tell you this thing is made here in Ghana, you never believe it.
Sure.
It's unfortunate that we are not proud of embodying made in Ghana.
Yeah.
Madam, if I may contribute.
There's a difference between the shoes, so unless you don't know.
I'm talking of the slippers, not the shoes.
Even slippers. If you are somebody who is really into it, you will know the difference. And there is a difference in terms of texture and quality.
Anne, are you there?
Yes, hi, Doc.
Yeah.
Sally is not all of them.
It's okay. Let the other guys speak.
With quality and comfort, you can't get it wrong with the foreign ones, I tell you.
Anne, are you there?
Yes, Doc, I'm here. Listening to the submissions from all, we can just say that it's because of positioning. Now, it's positioned in our mind. It's been positioned in our minds that Italian shoes are
the best.
So they just tap into that. The local guys just tap into what you call branding it and then placing made in Italy there. And then with that, we know that yes, we are going to buy it. That's just basically
That's what you said. It boils down to the positioning. I think so too. Thank you for that. And
Doc, I also think that if our Chinese people do fake one for us to buy, why they don't rather do it and also make money?
Perhaps we should have a round table with them and then get their view. But thank you for that submission, Chief. Thank you, everyone. So that is it for the foreign consumer culture positioning. And then we can also talk about the local consumer culture positioning. And here, they associate the brand with local cultural meanings, which reflects the local cultural norms and portrays the brand as being consumed by local people within the national culture. So it is depicted as something that has been locally produced for local people. And according to research, this type of positioning is mainly used when it comes to food items, non-durables, and household non-durables, right? Personal non-durables and household non-durables, because these ones are more susceptible to the local consumer culture position. And in Ghana here, we see so many examples of it. For the longest time, I thought Tasty Tom was being manufactured by Ghanaians here in Ghana, until I found out that Tasty Tom is actually owned by Indians who run the factory, employ Ghanaians, and have used a Ghanaian as the face of it, being Nana Mama Brown, to sell it. So it has been positioned as a local product produced for the local people. However, it's owned fully and manufactured completely by foreigners. So that's a typical example of how local consumer culture positioning can be used. Also, I remember when Johnny Walker was trying to enter Ghana, they tried to position it as a drink for the elite men in Ghana. So they were using people like Kofi Amoabe, who at that time was one of the most prestigious elder statesmen in Ghana. He was running the UT empire, and a lot of middle-aged men wanted to emulate his lifestyle. And they used him to be able to introduce the Johnny Walker brand into the Ghanaian market. And I think it was a great success. So these are two prime examples of local consumer culture positioning. I don't know if there's any other example that someone wants to give, or a contrary view that you want to express.
If you see this guy, delays product that she imports.
Yeah.
I made it as if she's being produced in Ghana, put her name on it.
Yeah, exactly.
And then because of her programs and stuff, she's always running around in her programs. So people think it's something that she's making here, and the fact it is representing her, they will buy it as a local product.
That's true. That's true. That's another very good example. Della, please speak up. Thank you, Lucy.
Yeah, we can look at Claysoft using that of a Samoajan.
Yes. Very good example.
And then when you are even dirty, you can easily.
Yeah. So he doesn't even own the brand, does he?
Yes, he doesn't.
Yeah, but in the beginning, the story I heard was that Samoajan has opened a factory and he's producing soap.
It's for Chinese. I know them.
Thank you for that submission as well. So please, do we see how the local consumer culture position is happening in so many forms right under our noses, and some of us can't even tell? Please, is there any other example? Any other one before we call it a day? Okay. So on that note, we've come to the end of our lecture.
Thank you, Doc. Good to see you today.
One question, please, before we go.
Yes.
There is thin fish that is produced in Ghana here, but it is taken outside. I've forgotten the name of the brand that comes from outside. Pioneer Food, and they bring it in with a different brand.
This Starkist.
No, it's Starkist, but there's another one that comes from UK, which is very superior. It's a superior brand. I've forgotten the name. But when you look at the brand very well, you realize that they write that produced in Ghana, but the label is an American label.
So you think it's from abroad? Yeah.
I'll get the name for you, but how do you say, what will you talk about that? Because they do the thing here, like a case.
Yeah, that's a typical example of local consumer culture position. Foreign consumer culture position.
Okay.
Yes, so they are positioning it as coming from that foreign culture.
Yes, please.
But technically it's from the local.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's FCTP.
John West, somebody has just mentioned it for me.
John West. I've been seeing John West around too. I have never known that they produce it in Ghana. I'm hearing it here for the first time.
Yes.
Wow.
It's done in Ghana.
It's John West produced in Ghana. That is very strange to my ear.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, it's done in Ghana.
Oh my God.
So
I manage the account.
The subsidiary here, but it's not a.
Are you serious? I never knew this.
Just look at their label.
Imported.
It's produced by EPFC. That's what somebody just posted. I manage their account, so I know them very well.
Wow. Thank you, Kojo Bone, for posting that. Wow. This is enlightening. So, do we see how endemic these positioning strategies are? Some of them are even being used under our noses and we can't see.
Yes. So if you buy John West, just look at, apart from their chicken stuff, the one that is really for the fish, just look at the way it is produced. You see that is produced from it.
I think, Lucy, I think that maybe it's a subsidiary here, but
no.
I know them to be a very foreign company outside.
No, all the active fish they bring out. We bought it. Some people, I have friends who bought it. I have a friend who bought it from the UK and bought a lot. We eat all the.
I buy them in the UK myself, and they are not Ghanaian.
We buy it from my former one of my former colleagues. He buys it for us here, but they don't put the labels on it. So we buy it empty like that without the labels on it. So
yeah, I think one of your classmates just confirmed that he handles the account.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So he knows.
Della.
Yeah, thank you, Della. So he knows firsthand that they are manufactured.
I don't know if we heard of the corona thing, the thing that happened in Tema, that they said 500 people. Yeah. It is them. Yeah, it is. It's them.
Wow.
I understand what you are saying, but I'm saying that the original or the mother company, I don't think is here in Ghana. Maybe they've opened a subsidiary here to serve the Ghanaian market.
Oh yeah.
They produce their food here, can it everything here, but they send the cans empty without branding. So the branding is done from outside and sent back to us. That is how it is.
You don't understand what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that John West is a company that has been there for a very long time outside. But maybe, like you're saying, they've opened a company here that maybe they are making it here as well. But this is not the only place that they make it. That's what I'm trying to say.
When you buy from UK,
yeah. Ivan, you are right.
But they have different subsidiaries, like the chicken and other. Those ones are not done here. But
yes, Lucy, I understand.
All the fish ones we bring from UK. Go and look at it. Go and look at it. Read it very well.
Lucy, take your time and listen to Ivan's perspective.
Right. I know what I'm saying.
Tell your wife.
From Costco all the time. So I know what
Della, tell your wife. Tell her. Tell her.
What Ivan is saying is right. It's a subsidiary though. They don't.
Lucy, your husband says it's right. Lucy, listen to Della. Oh, today is Father's Day.
Let's just take everyone's perspective and go and do our own research.
Go and do it.
Oh, but Lucy, I buy it from Costco, so I know what I'm saying.
Yeah, so go and read it very well, because me too, I argued about this.
Today is Father's Day. Why are you talking to us like that? Why? Della didn't.
I don't have a heart.
Happy Father's Day.
Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you, Dr. Sheena.
Happy Father's Day.
Dr. Sheena, this is all I've been looking from you, to wish me happy Father's Day.
Hey!
Oh,
you make my day.
Appreciate you so much. Keep working
Doc,
hard.
You make my day. Yes. Both day and night.
Okay. Happy Father's Day to all the men. May the Lord continue to give you grace to be good fathers and fill your pockets to be able to take care of your children.
Della, did you hear that?
For them.
Ivan,